to your remote learning experience. Today's lesson is going to be going over the different phases of meiosis. We've been briefly, kind of slowly but surely getting to this point where we're going to talk about the actual process of meiosis, which is a process that produces gametes or sex cells. So that's sperm and egg cells, okay? So yesterday your assignment was to create some flashcards with meiosis talking about the different phases and also including a picture. So I guess this could have been in flashcards or it could have been in the graphic organizer that I sent you. But if you want to revise those, now's the time to do that because I have all of this information on here. This information is actually information I pulled from your textbook. So I sent you guys those pages yesterday. So you actually have this information, but here is some more of it organized, okay? So I'm going to go through the different phases of meiosis with all of you. And if you guys have any questions or are confused about what exactly I'm talking about, please feel free to reach out to me through email, okay? So, also, this is a really cool image because this is an image of what looks like chromosomes in metaphase, that's this blue part right here, being separated by that microtubule stuff that I told you about, the ropes, okay? So that's actually kind of what mitosis or meiosis looks like in real time, not all the goofy pictures that we are used to seeing, okay? All right, so why do we even have meiosis, okay? As I mentioned earlier, meiosis produces gametes, or sperm and egg cells. And obviously without those sperm and egg cells, none of us would be able to be here today. So we need those sperm and egg cells because we need them for reproduction, okay? Meiosis also produces haploid oh my goodness, I can't speak. Haploid cells, okay? And all haploid means is half. So most of your cells in your body have 46 chromosomes, if you guys remember that. But meiosis produces cells with 23 chromosomes, okay? They only have half of the amount of genetic information. And the reason for that is when these sex cells combine, aka a sperm cell with 23 chromosomes and an egg cell with 23 chromosomes, they form a baby that has 46 chromosomes, okay? So meiosis is also a great opportunity for genetic variation, okay? So that's why you don't look exactly the same as your siblings or your parents, all right? And so having genetic variation is actually a very advantageous thing because what did I want to say about this? So I guess if there are certain diseases that you have in your DNA, some of those have an opportunity to not get passed on for meiosis, okay? So it makes sure that we're all somehow unique from one another, and this will make a lot more sense once we get to genetics, but it also just, it just provides an opportunity for genetic variation, okay? Because imagine if we all had the same exact DNA being expressed. If one of us were to get some sort of disease or disorder, that means everybody would. So this ensures that there's a little more variation within populations. But like I said, we'll get to that with genetics, so don't worry too much about that. All right, so there are different processes in meiosis that make it a little bit more unique than mitosis. One of those processes is called crossing over, okay? So crossing over occurs when homologous chromosomes exchange genetic information, okay? So as you can see in this image right here, these chromosomes, they're kind of just switching their arms around. And at the end of this, we have a blue chromosome with a little section of red on it and a red chromosome with a little section of blue on it, all right? And this is the process that creates the genetic variation that I was talking about, okay? Another interesting term that can be confusing sometimes is homologous chromosomes, okay? So remember that genes are specific sections on chromosomes, okay? And so homologous chromosomes have genes on the same locations, okay? And they have similar structures too. So if you guys remember that karyotype that I talked about Let me actually see if I can find an image of that. Hang on, it might be in the trash. Is this it? That's not exactly what I wanted, but hang on a second. Sorry, be patient with me. Ah, here it is. So this is our human karyotype that we are talking about. So homologous chromosomes, for example, chromosome 1 would be this chromosome right here and this chromosome right here. Those are homologous chromosomes, okay? So during meiosis, these two would switch their genetic information, okay? So remember, you have 2 copies of each chromosome, all right? And what happens is those chromosomes exchange genetic information. So one of these chromosomes is going to come from mom, and one of these chromosomes is going to come from dad, okay? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of clarification into the homologous chromosomes. All they do is they kind of just find each other during meiosis, exchange genetic information, and then meiosis keeps going, okay? But before meiosis even begins, we have interphase, okay? So interphase, remember, is that phase where the cell is kind of just doing its thing. It's growing, but it's also replicating its DNA, okay? It makes a copy of its DNA. So if you guys remember when we talked about chromosome counting, you start with 46 chromosomes and they make copies of those chromosomes, and you have still with 46 chromosomes but 92 chromatids, okay? Those are the chromosomes that are kind of by themselves, and then the chromatids and the chromosomes are the ones that make that X-like shape. So let me see if I can draw an image of that. So remember, this is what your chromosomes look like before DNA replication. After DNA replication, they look like this. Okay? So you start with 46 of these before DNA replication. All right? And you also have 46 of these after DNA replication, 46 chromosomes. Okay? But 92 chromatids. Okay? 92 chromatids. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, moving on to the first part of meiosis, which is called meiosis 1. Okay, so this is going to include prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, and telophase 1. Okay, so prophase 1 is a lot like prophase in mitosis. So what happens during this phase is that homologous chromosomes will kind of pair up, okay? So homologous or chromosome number 1 will find the other chromosome number 1, and they are going to pair up together, okay? So they kind of find each other, and this is when they actually exchange their genetic information, okay? So it looks like this process right here. The homologous chromosomes get together, exchange that genetic information, and then they're ready for the next phase, okay? Also similar to mitosis is that nuclear envelope will start to break down so we can get into the good stuff, the DNA, and then those microtubules, also known as a spindle, start to form from those centrioles, okay? Next, moving on, we have metaphase 1. Just like metaphase in mitosis, these chromosomes are going to line up in the middle of the cell, just like this, okay? So chromosomes, the homologous chromosomes kind of stick together at this point, okay? So let's say the red ones are from your mom, the blue ones are from your dad, all right? Those are homologous chromosomes, all right? They have the same structure, all right? And then also at this point, remember that microtubule rope, it's going to lasso itself around the chromosomes. So eventually during anaphase 1, those chromosomes can be pulled apart and they will move to opposite ends of the cell, okay? So we can actually see why there's a lot of genetic variation within meiosis, because after crossing over, each cell is going to get kind of a different part of DNA. Okay? Moving on to telophase 1. Okay? So, as you can see, these are two unique cells that are forming. They are not exactly the same. All right? Or so it looks like. Yes. Okay? So at this point, those microtubules will start to break down, no more rope. The chromosomes actually become a little bit more unorganized, not quite like the spaghetti-like structure that we call chromatin, but they just start to unravel a little bit, kind of relax a little bit. And then also there are two nuclei that are going to form. So remember, the nucleus is what kind of contains your DNA, or these chromosomes right here. And lastly, the cell kind of splits with cytokinesis, okay? So it splits the cytoplasm and forms two cells, okay? So after meiosis 1, we have two cells. But we are not done yet, because we have to go to meiosis 2, okay? During meiosis 2, this is when we start to form those 4 new cells, okay? So first, with meiosis 2, we start with prophase 2. Just to clarify, there is only one interphase in both meiosis and mitosis. There's no interphase 1 and interphase 2 in meiosis. It's just interphase and then meiosis 1, meiosis 2. Okay? So all the phases in meiosis 2 are going to be labeled with Roman numeral 2 after them because they are in meiosis 2. All right? Prophase 2, very similar to prophase 1, is that those chromosomes, they were a little bit relaxed at the end of meiosis 1, but now they're ready to tighten back up and become more organized so that they can eventually be split again. All right? That microtubule rope is going to form again and start attaching to some of the chromosomes. Important thing to note is that there is no crossing over in this phase, okay? No exchange of genetic information. The chromosomes, they just stick to themselves. They're like, hey, I'm good over here. You stay over there. We're all set to go. All right? Moving on to metaphase 2, pretty much the same as we've been talking about. The chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell, just like is shown in this image. All right, and also those microtubule ropes are going to lasso onto those chromosomes eventually. You're going to have to rip them apart. All right, an important thing to note is that during metaphase 2, when these chromosomes line up like this, they don't line up in any particular order, okay? They just randomly assort themselves in any kind of way, all right? That's called a law of random assortment, or independent assortment, I think, but there's no need to go over that in depth. Just know that during metaphase 2, these chromosomes, they just kind of line up willy-nilly. There's no particular order, right? No line leader, no caboose, just they get in a line and they are happy with that, okay? Next is anaphase 2. Sadly, the sister chromatids are ripped apart and they move to the opposite ends of the cell, okay? So if you guys remember, all right, so this is our chromosome made up of two sister chromatids, one sister chromatid right here, one sister chromatid right here, and eventually they are going to split just like in mitosis and meiosis, or actually just like in mitosis, my bad. Just like this. So these are sister chromatids, but these are individual chromatids, but they are also chromosomes. Remember, chromatid, chromosome, all right, kind of like if your friend has a nickname, their name's Steve, but for whatever reason you call them Peter or something like that, that's the same thing. Chromatid or chromosome right here. Chromosome right here made up of two sister chromatids. Okay? So, slideshow, current slide. Okay. Moving on to telophase 2, all right? This is the very last part of meiosis 2, all right? So what happens is 4 nuclei form around the chromosomes, okay? So we're going to have a nuclei that start to form in this cell, and in these 2 cells down here, all right? And those nuclei kind of wrap themselves around the chromosomes to protect them and make sure they're nice and safe, all right? That microtubule rope starts to break down and kind of disappear. The centrioles start to disappear, and both sets of cells start to undergo cytokinesis. Okay, so they kind of just split right down the middle, and we have 4 new cells. Okay, so this is the product of meiosis. Okay, after meiosis is done, those chromosomes become very much spaghetti-like again into chromatin. As you can see here, it's a glorious mess of DNA, right? And as a result, we get 4 genetically unique cells, okay? Then, like I said earlier, that's why you don't look the same as your siblings or your parents, unless you're a twin. Identical twin, that is, okay? So, this process produces sperm and egg cells, okay? So realistically, these 4 new cells that were created are sperm, okay? And these sperm cells only have 23 chromosomes, all right? Because eventually they will try to combine with an egg, all right? And that egg, also produced from meiosis, oh, that was a pretty good circle, also has 23 chromosomes. Okay? So the fusion of that sperm cell and that egg cell produces a baby or a zygote. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right? So this sperm cell is genetically unique from this sperm cell, which is genetically unique from this sperm cell and this sperm cell. Okay? They're all unique from one another. All right? So the product of fertilization with this sperm and this egg cell might not look the same as the product of this sperm and this egg cell, if that makes sense. Okay? But this will all kind of come together once we get to genetics, which is actually a very, very, very fun unit. Okay? So it looks like that is the end of the slideshow, all right? So I really want you guys to take the time to look at the different phases of meiosis, all right? Pretty soon we're going to have some sort of assessment on this, both on mitosis and meiosis. So all you have to do today is look at the flashcards or the graphic organizer that you filled out, and if there's any need to revise or add any information to those based on today's lesson, you can absolutely do that, okay? But that is going to be a resource for you to use on your assessment, okay? So that is going to be it for today, and I hope that you guys have a fantastic and safe weekend.